Good morning. Hello, everyone. I am Dan Cohen. Let me know if you're with me, if you can hear me, everything sounds okay. This is Dan Cohen with Uncaptured Media, coming to you live, unscripted, a few notes in front of me, and a few tabs open. But I'm going to be sharing some thoughts today as part of my commitment to start streaming, casting, whatever you want to call it, to share my understanding of what is happening in this world, especially in my country, in the United States. Good morning, Rose. Thank you for being with me. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Um, if you don't know me, I'm a journalist, and I guess what people would call an independent journalist, if that's really a thing. I don't know. Everybody has to depend on something. But I don't have any corporate funders or big funders, or I have my little Substack subscriptions um, and little things like that. So if you want to support my work, that is greatly appreciated to keep the lights on here. But as I said, I'm a journalist in Washington, D.C. I am, by definition, a filmmaker, though I don't really consider myself, I don't think of myself as a filmmaker. I'm just a guy who happened to have made a few films. I made a film called Killing Gaza with Max Blumenthal about the 2014 mega assault on the Gaza Strip, which I filmed and edited. And I made a film series about Haiti, which is undergoing what I firmly believe is a revolutionary process right now. But if you're on social media, you probably would think that Haiti is just a bunch of cannibals, cannibal gangs who are trying to get into the United States. That is the narrative that Elon Musk and gangs of the real gangs of influencers of the influencer term is it's a nonsense term. What they are is really actors who all got that memo at the same time, and to declare that the leader of this revolutionary cause, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, who is a former police officer, who is the central figure in our documentary series, Another Vision, is actually a cannibal gang leader, and the goal of that is to maintain chaos in Haiti, and that's why Blackwater, Eric Prince of Blackwater fame, has deployed his mercenaries with the blessing of the U.S. government to Haiti. That's why the U.S. government, whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, who are the puppets and supposedly in charge, are joined together in this effort. This is a bipartisan effort. It doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans or former Democrats who are now Republicans or anything. They're all the same. These are deeper agendas, multi-generational agendas, and I think that's a key thing that everyone needs to understand, is that nothing really happens by accident when you get to those levels of power, whether it's who the president is, whether it's what country the U.S. military is about to be sent to invade, or some proxy force is going to be sent to invade. None of this happens by accident. These are multi-generational agendas being carried forth. So please let me know if you're with me in the comments, in the chat. My understanding of our world, of what's going on around us, I will say, has pretty dramatically changed over the past years, and I maintain my principles. I'm still the same. I have the same principles that have always motivated me. I have the same integrity that has always motivated me, but my understanding of how the world works, of what's going on around us, about what is important, what our priorities should be, has changed pretty dramatically. And you might have noticed that. You might see that I'm not very active on social media, and that's because, as you can see in the title, which I actually butchered, It should be social media national security theater. So that's how you can tell that it's just one guy doing this. I even got the title wrong. Um, but I am firmly of the belief, the understanding, the conviction that social media and podcasts are national security theaters where we are led to believe mythologies, where we are uh, given sets of priorities that are against our own interests. If you are um, a if you are on social media, you probably believe that the important subjects to be thinking about right now are Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein files. You probably think the Charlie Kirk assassination incident is very important and explains a lot. You probably have Nick Fuentes somewhere in there and his interview with Tucker Carlson, which is all over the media, and other podcasts are talking about them. Somewhere down there is the lab leak, because that is a story that just won't go away. And, you know, I think if you talk to people who are not engaged in social media, who are, you know, regular working class people in the United States, I don't think they're going to be thinking about those things. I don't think it's very important for them. I think they have real priorities, such as, well, if I walk out my door here in Washington, D.C., where I live about 5 minutes from a 5-minute drive from the United States Capitol building. And what I will see is drug addiction. I will see violence. I will see homelessness. I will see people who walk in a daze in the street and are not there mentally, and who may have been normal people not too long ago, and and now live on the edge of death. And you won't see much about, the opioid crisis, for example, which is the greatest loss of life event since the Civil War of the United States. And that's not really on the radar on social media. And we still have between 1 and 200 people dying every day of opioids, and those are overwhelmingly young people, 20, 30, 40 years old, who should be living the rest of their lives. And many of them, it's not as if they're not even necessarily drug addicts or anything like that. It's people who've gotten addicted by taking some opioid once, and then they ended up taking fentanyl because it's cheaper, and then they died. And I'm gonna just block this annoying troll. Yes, you. So bear with me. Where is this person? Let's see now. I don't know. Whatever. This person is, I find to be kind of annoying, so I don't even know how to block them. Whatever. I'll just ignore. Congratulations, AJ. You're idiot. You're an idiot and possibly a national security actor. Anyway, and so none of these priorities, none of the things that actually matter in the United States, whether it's the opioid crisis, whether it's the controlled demolition of the economy, of our social fabric, of how we interact, of everything matters if you're on social media. The fact that here in Washington, D.C., we now have regulations, laws that say youth cannot be, underage teenagers cannot be out in the streets past 11 o'clock. And that's because groups of youth are roaming around attacking people and terrorizing people. And this is not just a mythology that's talked about in the news to scare people. That may be true to some degree, that it's been used to fearmonger, but it is true. I witness it myself every day when I drive my daughter to school. I am worried about being attacked. There have been multiple incidents where I've been nearly attacked, and my life has been put in danger. And this is in the capital of the United States. Um, and so, so these are the real issues that don't get talked about on anywhere on social media, unless it's, some video that Elon Musk or one of his influencers puts out to just show how crazy everything is and to agitate people and to make you, scared and bigoted and things like that. So hold on one second. And amazing. I literally have no idea how to block this annoying troll, so I'll just ignore. But curfew, Mr. Wonderful says curfew for youth is garbage, to be honest. Yes, I mean it's not a real solution, but the point is look at what the youth has become. I mean, I've seen children, small children with guns, literally like 10-year-old children carrying a gun in a plastic bag when I went to a place around the corner. I saw picking up my child from school the other day. There's a high school nearby. There was a fight after school of about 100 kids gathered around in the middle of an extremely busy intersection. This stuff is not uncommon. And the reason is because our youth are being destroyed. They are not the problems. They are the victims. These are just children. They're 14, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. These children are victims of our system, and the system is not willing to do what is needed to help them, to properly educate them, to think, to teach them to think critically. It wants them on social media, entrapped in social media, ruining their brains. I see kids smoking weed at 7:30 in the morning. And so this is the solution: is more control, more criminalization, to put these kids into the prison system. And it's that it really says everything. So so that's what's going on here. And but again, if you're using social media, you're just thinking about the Epstein files and Charlie Kirk and like this idiot AJ, Jews controlling America, and that's the narrative being promoted on all of the big podcasts right now. So whether this person is even a real person or is just a national security actor, I have no idea, but they are on the national security script, and they think they're trolling me, but all they're doing is showing how controlled they are, and they probably think they're freed. Now we understand that the Jews are controlling America. Okay, and you'll also be told to think that China is very bad, and China is attacking us, and China is sending fentanyl and opioids into the United States, and maybe most, I'm going to say, one of the biggest pieces of evidence of how our country, through the use of social media and by sharing and by use of podcasts, is being destroyed, is by the widespread belief by people who consider themselves right-wing, left-wing, progressive, conservative, the belief that some novel virus leaked from a laboratory in Wuhan, China, or maybe was engineered in University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, or some combination thereof, and USAID funded it, or maybe the Chinese did it, the Chi-Coms. Depending on your political proclivities, your political sensibilities, you've consumed one version of this or the other, and this is evidence. This webpage, covidcon.org, is evidence of a gigantic fraud perpetrated on the United States and on the world. And if you look at how tyranny sparked and exploits the coronavirus pandemic, and I am of the conviction that, in fact, there was no pandemic, and that's something that I've discussed somewhat, and I will more, but this should be very clear. This website, COVIDCon, is a project of the Oslo Freedom Forum. Now, a lot of my followers are left-wing anti-imperialists and might be familiar with the Oslo Freedom Forum. This is a who's who, a gathering of people who are traitors to their countries. And I'm going to speak about this probably every time I stream, because this is a gigantic piece of evidence that I can't get anyone to bother to look at, because they've all taken in the lab leak mythology. Okay, so these people are all traitors to their country. These are not people who are patriots, who care about their neighbors, their loved ones. These people are not loyal to any flag. They're not loyal to the United States. They are loyal to the titans of finance capitalism, who are not loyal to any flag. These are actually just little pawns. Masih Alinejad, who lives in Brooklyn and has done everything possible to destroy Iranian sovereignty. Whatever you think of the Iranian government, it's for the Iranian people to decide. But Masih Alinejad, rather, is paid by the U.S. government. Paid by, well, then it was Mike Pompeo a few years ago when she was out front, and whoever the rotating cast is of U.S. government officials that are basically also pawns, higher level pawns. Maybe they're bishops, and you don't actually know who are the hands on the moving the pieces and what their long-term agendas are. And so if you're using social media, you're watching on a daily basis. You're watching headlines on a daily basis and reacting to whatever the story is, whether it's Charlie Kirk or Nick Fuentes or Tucker Carlson. Well, these people are thinking generations. The real movers, the people who really who really control power in the world, are thinking years, decades, generations in advance, with agendas that they will never openly discuss. And it takes real expertise or real literacy to understand those. So this website is evidence that the lab leak theory, which virtually everyone believes, is a gigantic hoax. And I can't get anyone to talk about this. Why is there no left-wing or alternative media personality to talk about this? I mean, the truth is, I've spoken to Jimmy Dore about this in private. I spoke to him on the phone. I explained why the lab leak theory is nonsense, why the idea of an RNA pandemic is nonsense. And no, COVID-19 was not a bioweapon. I'll get into that. The goal is not to destroy humanity. The goal is to take control of humanity, is to manage humanity. Sorry, Mr. Wonderful, there on YouTube, you're not right. That is a national security state narrative, that COVID-19 was a bioweapon. Okay? I'm going to get into that. But I can't get Jimmy Dore to talk about this. And yes, I'm saying this publicly, and I don't really know Jimmy Dore personally. I've met him a couple times, and he's always been friendly to me. He's always been nice and supportive, and I don't know if he knows he's on a national security narrative. But why is it that Jimmy Dore, not only Jimmy Dore, no one will talk about this? And I mean, I have incredible, massive amounts of research showing that the lab leak, it's not just the lab leak, it's the COVID origin debate. Okay? Both sides of it. The debate from the very beginning, was COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, from a bat cave in southern China, a bat in a cave in southern China, or was it from a laboratory that leaked out intentionally or unintentionally and somehow transferred to a human and then went all over the world and made us all very sick? Okay, that's the narrative that we've been told, and that's why the lab leak theory that is now completely mainstream, that virtually everyone believes, that Jeffrey Sachs, the progressive hero who's now against the Ukraine war and against the COVID, the genocide in Gaza, That's why he's on the Lancet board or the Lancet Commission with Peter Hotez, who says it was from a natural origin. Okay? These people are all working together against you, against me, against our families, against our loved ones, against America. And no one will even talk about this. And I figured this out by applying the same exact principles of investigation that I used for everything else, that I did for understanding that Hong Kong was a US funded color revolution, which I published an article, an investigation in the Gray Zone back in 2019. And the Gray Zone won't touch this either. The Gray Zone promotes lab leak. The Gray Zone interviews Jeffrey Sachs to say why lab leak is the truth. Okay? I applied the exact same skill set, the exact same protocol to understand a national security script. And that's what this is. So now the person who I understood, who when I understood that this was a national security script, when I saw how death certificates were being faked, were being turned upside down, I got in touch with a biologist named Jonathan Cooey, Jonathan J. Cooey. And I've talked about him before. If you look him up on this platform, on Twitter, you'll see that he mostly trolls on Twitter. And that's because he understands, and I understood from watching him how he explains it, that social media and podcasts are a national security theater. But if you actually look at his work at GigaOhm Biological, you will understand, if you are capable, if you are willing to be challenged, if you have integrity and principles, then you will come to understand that social media and podcasts are a national security theater. You will understand that the lab leak natural origin debate is an elaborate hoax perpetrated on the American people and the rest of the world, the entire world, this mythology, in order to destroy our sovereignty, to reduce us to the status of experimental animals, laboratory animals, who can only access resources by taking what they call, what everyone understands are COVID-19 shots, but are not vaccines these are not just injections. These are something called transfections, which every academic biologist understands what they are. But for some reason, Jonathan J. Cooey, is the only one who's willing to say it and lost his career for it. And that's why the people of Ukraine now have the app called Dia, which I reported on extensively. And this app is what they call your life in a smartphone. And if you are not if you have not allowed yourself to be transfected, taken the so-called COVID-19 shots, then you will not have access to resources and the universal basic income that they have promoted, which is the same thing that they want to do in the United States to remove your sovereignty. That's why US aid is funding Dia in Ukraine, because they want to use that as a model to import into the United States. And that's why Samantha Power, during the Biden administration, had an event called Dia in DC, which I wasn't able to attend. But I had shown everything already at that point. I was in Colombia at that point, in the country of Colombia, working on investigations. And I showed what Dia was at that point, but nobody picked up on it. So that's the goal, is to destroy us. And that's what's happening through social media. Okay, this is their tool. This is their weapon to do it. And I'm going to get into some of these narratives, and you'll notice that, I make mistakes, and sometimes this is all very raw. This is just me. There's no one else here with me. There's a cat somewhere around here that might annoy me, and I don't know. This is just me giving my thoughts. And as you can see, my single the principle that my single most important conviction is my integrity. If people don't want to be friends with me, if I don't get invited to parties or anything like that, I don't care, because this isn't a social scene for me. Journalism is not a social scene. It's not a club. I don't care if I am popular on social media or I get invited to hang out. It doesn't matter. What matters is humanity in the future. My child, our children, everyone's children. And a lot of people maybe start with integrity, but they lose it along the way because they get paid. You know, you start to get a salary. Upton Sinclair wrote about that. What's the Upton Sinclair quote? Never try to, let's see. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. I think that is one of the reasons why none of these anti-imperialist journalists will take a look at this page. Okay? And there are many national security actors who are deployed in order to prevent you from understanding this. So this is one of the few places where you will get the truth, and I will make mistakes. I will get things wrong, but I will never lie to you. That is my guarantee. I will never lie. So again, I want to encourage people to check out the work of Jonathan J. Cooey, who has been instrumental in revolutionizing how I think, how a number of other people think, and needs to be instrumental in revolutionizing how you think. And the way to do that is by watching his streams, his casts, I think as he prefers to call them, at Giga Ohm Biological. I'm showing it here. It's not an easy channel to say, but I think he's changing the game, you could say. And another one, there's another person who has really changed my understanding, and that is a guy by the name of Mark Kulak, whose website Houstonic Live is here. Neither of these people are very active on social media, and that's for good reason, because it is a national security theater, and basically, unless you're using it in a way where you understand it's a theater, then you will be sucked in. And there are liars everywhere, and you know, I think most people use this national security theater of X, of YouTube, of Facebook, TikTok, and they consume it. And many people don't actually even say anything, but what they don't understand is that they are, you know, it's like when you're sitting too close to the screen, you don't understand that there's an outside. It's like when you watch, you know, when you're a little kid, and you and maybe I can show this example. I'm going to show this example of how Okay, let's see. Did you ever go to Disneyland when you were a kid? And oh man, let's see. Can I find it? Well, I guess this is it. Yes. All right, this will work. Bear with me 1 second, folks. Again, this is all just me thinking out loud. I wasn't planning to get into this, but I think it's actually relevant. I went to Disneyland when I was a kid, and my favorite ride was no, Mark Kulak. That is not the spelling. It is Kulacz, I believe. And I should say his channel is called Houstonic.live. I'll share it again. Someone in the comments asked. If you go to Houstonic, it's like there's a river, I think in Connecticut, somewhere up there, where areas I'm not terribly familiar with, called the Houstonic, and that's where he's from, kind of Boston area. And his website is called Housatonic.live. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him on Twitch. You can find him on Rumble. You can find him on a whole bunch of platforms. Okay, Mr. Wonderful, I understand you disagree with me. I understand you're not paid to be here. I take your word for that. And I'm just telling you, I think you're wrong, but I can tell you you're wrong. We'll get into it more. I'll get more into the COVID narrative in another time. But yeah, check out Mark's work. But this is the way to understand social media. I think this is a useful way to understand it. Okay. When I was a kid, my favorite ride at Disneyland was Star Tours. I don't know if anyone ever went on Star Tours, if you remember that, but Star Tours was the like Star Wars. You go into, it was the Star Wars ride, and you go, and it's supposed to be like going on. I can't even remember. It's not the Millennium Falcon. It's some kind of transporter or something. Okay, so this is the original one, and of course, if you're a child, it feels very real. That's the whole idea. You even forget that it's a simulation, that it's not real, that it's just a ride at Disneyland. Okay. Now bring yourself.
Attention, please. Star Tours Flight 1119, non-stop service to Endor, is now ready for boarding at gate number 1.
And checking your notifications, and maybe your messages, and maybe someone important DM'd you. Okay.
I see they're loading our navigator R2-D2, and then we'll be on our way.
Oh, okay.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Star Tours 45, elevator platform has been activated. Commence final pre-launch sequence.
Roger, Control. All status go.
ST-45, you are cleared for takeoff. Contact departure control at 120.4.
Copy 120.4.
45, you're going the wrong way.
And then things go wrong. So here's like the, I don't know, the lab leak. Oh, things went wrong. Things are going crazy. And when you're a kid, it feels very real. It's very, very exciting. You're very engaged in it.
I meant to do that. A little shortcut. R2, light speed to Endor. R2, we passed the Endor moon. Now what's the matter? Oh no! Comets!
Okay, you understand what I'm getting at? That you suspend the disbelief. And this is what happens on social media, where you think that you're interacting with all these real people, but this is corporate social media that is a national security operation where there are people who are paid to lie to you. They are paid to disseminate lies, and you cannot see them coordinating behind the scenes. And it's accounts who claim to be someone. There's a difference between me, the person, Dan Cohen, and Dan Cohen's account on X. I mean, I can tell you I'm running my account, but can you be sure that everyone you are interacting with, even if there's a real name on there and it's representing a real person, that it's that actual person behind it? No, you can't. Okay, yeah, I'm going to get busted for copyright. Good point. Thank you, Ashura. But you understand my point? If you're too close, if you're in this theater, you forget that it's not real, that it's simulated. But if you take a step back, then you understand that this is a theater. Okay? I guess I've already violated the copyright. By putting the sound on, I'm going to be in trouble with copyright. Okay? So now we're approaching a Star Destroyer. Oh, we're figuring out that the Chinese leaked the lab. That's what is going on right now. This is the parallel. Okay? We're taking down the Wuhan lab, and Jeffrey Sachs is my co-pilot. Okay? You understand? You have to escape from this theater. Now, let's take this and actually apply this to what are some of the big stories on social media at this point. Well, the big story right now is Jeffrey Epstein, the Epstein files. Okay, the Epstein files are the huge thing. And now it's on Saturday Night Live. It's all over social media, of course. All the podcasters, all the TV shows are talking about the Epstein files. And we've been talking about this for a while, but it doesn't get anywhere. We don't have any hard evidence. The whole idea of the Epstein files is that it's going to be some kind of smoking gun evidence. It's going to show all the people who were involved in some kind of pedophilia ring run by some Jew named Jeffrey Epstein, who brought them to his island where they would perform horrible acts on young women and maybe girls. And that Jeffrey Epstein was actually acting on behalf of Mossad, Israel. And that's how Israel has such incredible amount of power in the world. And that's why the U.S. supported the Gaza genocide, and why the U.S., no matter who the president is, no matter who we elect, Israel is controlling the U.S. It's the Epstein files is supposed to be it's supposed to be a proxy for how power works in this country. And this is what everyone believes. And whatever the truth of the Epstein files is, and I've no doubt that Jeffrey Epstein was a sleazebag, and there are many people around him who are sleazebags, and Donald Trump is a sleazebag. I mean, there's nothing terribly shocking there. My point is, you can see how this is a national security narrative by, for example, this Washington Post article. Now, not long ago, this is from September, so almost 2 months ago, somebody put up a statue of Trump and Epstein holding hands on the National Mall, making for a great photo op. Now, take a look at this article. It really says a lot in the Washington Post. This work is the latest in a series of politically charged sculptures critical of the president that have been placed in Washington and elsewhere by an anonymous group. Okay. Scroll down. The new sculpture is similar in style and content to several previous installations by an anonymous group of artists, such as one in June titled Dictator Approved, that included statements of support for Trump from authoritarian leaders, Russian President Vladimir Putin, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. So there we have the list of, official bad guys according to the U.S. government. The same people that made this Epstein-Trump statue and placed it with permission of the National Park Service, which I doubt is very easy to obtain, though certainly may be done, are behind another statue saying Trump loves dictators. That was the narrative we were, of course, given in the first Trump era. The first piece of protest art by the group appeared last October when it installed a replica of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's desk that included a fake pile of poop on top of it. That work paid mock tribute to the January 6th rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Okay, so it's January 6th, another narrative of the national security state that there was an attempt by a fascist coup, an insurrection, a violent insurrection by a bunch of conservatives MAGA supporters who had been basically led there and entrapped and told by Donald Trump and then a bunch of people, including Nick Fuentes, to storm the Capitol. Starting to see the theme. Okay. The Washington Post was alerted to the Trump and Epstein statue early Tuesday morning by a text from someone claiming to be one of the artists responsible for its creation and its predecessors. His identity has not been confirmed by the Post, but he has provided information about the artworks that would only be available to someone involved in the manufacture and placement. In a phone interview Tuesday, he said he wants to remain anonymous because he wants the artwork to speak for itself. So the Washington Post somehow managed to contact this anonymous artist and agreed to maintain his anonymity. Now, why would this artist want to maintain? Why would they want to be anonymous in the first place? Are they under some kind of threat by the fascist Trump regime? It's going after Democrats, going after liberals? No. Okay? Because it's obvious it's a national security operation. I mean, that's basically all you need to know. Anonymous people that put this statue there in a site of maximum visibility, and they're reported in the Washington Post as some kind of real act of resistance, and they agreed to protect the person's identity. And these people also made these statues about Trump-loving dictators and how January 6th was a dangerous insurrection. Okay, so my point is, this is another story that goes nowhere, whether it's lab leak, whether it's who killed Charlie Kirk, whether it's the Epstein files, they never go anywhere. We just get more circumstantial evidence and more, things that feel like they're going somewhere. If you're believing the script, it's almost like a soap opera. Like, what's the next chapter? What are they going to unveil? And meanwhile, they never talk about anything real. They never talk about, I don't know, the opioid crisis, things we talked about before. Gun violence. I heard like 4 gunshots last night around the corner at 11 p.m. The cops didn't even come. Not that the cops are going to do much. They don't care. Okay? But that's what's going on in American cities. There are murders all the time. We have a major crisis in this society, and it's not by accident. But if you're on social media and you're watching podcasts and you're watching Saturday Night Live and Jimmy Kimmel and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes or anybody supposedly left-wing or right-wing, you're going to be getting the same basic narrative, the same priorities. Now, this stream is supposed to be about Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, and I want to talk about the mainstreaming of Nick Fuentes and what that actually represents. Now, of course, since if you noticed, right after Charlie Kirk was killed, or apparently killed, whatever, this whole thing is very strange and suspect. And I'm not saying he wasn't killed, but I'm not saying he absolutely was killed. I just don't know. Right after that, Nick Fuentes the first thing Nick Fuentes did was release it. Nick Fuentes hated, or supposedly hated, Charlie Kirk, okay? Because he saw him as some kind of controlled opposition, Israel lobby plant in the right wing. And he frequently talked about him and talked about how he hated him and incited against him is really what he did. Talked about how we need to go after him and talked about we need to focus all of our firepower. The Groypers need to focus all of their firepower on Charlie Kirk. But then when Charlie Kirk was supposedly killed, Nick Fuentes suddenly became very respectable. He said, I had my disagreements with Charlie Kirk, but I never want to see him killed. That's what basically what he said. And immediately, Nick Fuentes started becoming mainstream. He was mainstreamed. He had interviews on, let's see where. What do we have? Oh, on
your opinion of me. I'm Middle Eastern, married to a white girl. Or do you think it's better off for America to minimize more of me coming to America?
America is no longer America. Mass migration is changing what America is. And I want to conserve what America.
Why should Patrick Bet-David, who is a minority owner of the Yankees, an incredibly wealthy person, why should he care what Nick Fuentes thinks about his marriage? Why would he invite that question? Unless to basically humiliate him, to question his marriage and his existence in this country. Why would he invite that question unless it's a national security script? There's no other reason. There's no other sensible reason. Why would Patrick Bet-David, Candace Owens, Glenn Greenwald, who else? Eventually, of course, Tucker Carlson. Why would they all have this guy, Nick Fuentes, on at the same time? Nick Fuentes is considered this white supremacist who hates Jews and hates everyone, but suddenly he's becoming respectable. Okay? Nick Fuentes, I'm going to argue, doesn't actually believe anything he says. He is a national security actor on a script. He's not really even, I don't even know if he's really even a white supremacist. He just changes what he says depending on what he's told, the script that he's given. Watch this. Wait a minute. Can somebody confirm that you can even hear? I'm getting a notification that the browser has lost connection to your screen share audio. Try your screen again. Okay, hold on. Try this again. Okay. Gonna fix that. Let's see if it works. Oh man, come on. Restart your browser if this continues to be a problem. Amazing. Incredible. So my browser, so this just stopped working. So I don't have audio. Screen again. Restart your browser. I don't know, folks. Some technical difficulties here. If I restart my browser, you have audio. Okay, somebody has audio. Well, but not, let me see. Tell me if you get audio.
It would be if the Muslims allied with the white people. I actually don't want to live near a mosque.
Palestinian Muslims today use terrorism as a tactic. Both sides are guilty. Now, that doesn't mean that Israel.
Can anyone hear his audio? Please let me know. No audio. We can't have you. Good. Okay. So you can hear. Okay. The contradictory Nick Fuentes. Great. Okay. Perfect. Thank you, folks. All right. So let's continue. Just here's the contradictions of Nick Fuentes. We'll start over.
And I'll tell you something else. People like to say, oh, you love Muslims and blacks. Look, I love everybody. I'll take it a step further, though. Because I'm a Christian. I think Muslims are invading Europe. Jews brought all these Muslims here. They'd be talking about Trump's Muslim ban. You know what? I think Muslims should be banned from America. What a shame it would be if the Muslims allied with the white people. I actually don't want to live near a mosque.
Palestinian Muslims today use terrorism as a tactic. Both sides are guilty. Now, that doesn't mean that Israel can't defend itself. I'm just going to go on the record and say I don't want Israel to be destroyed up there. It's perfectly reasonable that they would defend themselves. I don't care about Palestinians. I don't support it on either side, and I'm not pro-Palestine. I'm pro-America. I'm pro-America.
If I am not allowed to express myself politically without a lynch mob showing up to my front door to kill me, then we don't have civil rights. We must identify them. We must have them fired from their jobs. They must be censored on social media. There must be a cost.
Right? Charlie Kirk is a retard and honestly deserves the death penalty for being a coward.
Okay, so you see that Nick Fuentes, it's not just that he's a hypocrite, it's that he doesn't believe in anything. That is the work of a national security state actor, someone on a script. That's why in this incredibly shady, murky, apparent assassination of Charlie Kirk, enter Nick Fuentes, the mainstreaming of Nick Fuentes, okay? And that culminated with the, I love this one. Here's Brett Weinstein, another gigantic fraud, a magnificent fraud, and a monumental fraud is the word I'm looking for. Here's hit the short that the Dark Horse podcast put out on Nick Fuentes being on Tucker Carlson.
What has happened in the immediate past is the death of Charlie Kirk essentially created a vacuum. And that vacuum has pulled Nick Fuentes into the mainstream. And
okay, first, do you see? So it's not that Nick Fuentes was scripted to enter the mainstream. It's that Nick Fuentes filled a vacuum. It was an organic process. You see? Brett Weinstein is on script because he is also a national security actor. He is given a script. That doesn't mean he knows everything about everything going on and they're all, they all know what each other are going to do. This is what Jay Couey calls national security actors on a need-to-know basis. You don't need to know the whole story. You don't even need to know where it's going. You just have to play your part when you're told. It's not an organic process.
He showed up in all kinds of mainstream places. He showed up in a debate with Dave Smith. He showed up on Glenn Greenwald's System Update program. He's now showed up with Tucker Carlson. So he's now all sorts of places. And there's a question about what to make of it. First of all, should somebody like Tucker be having Nick Fuentes on? Well, I don't have a strong reaction to the question of whether to have him on. My tendency as a civil libertarian is I don't want to silence people. I want to hear what they have to say, and then I want to meet them with superior arguments when they have stuff wrong. So I'd kind of rather people be aware of this than not be aware of it.
That's not the clip I was thinking of. I mean, there's a clip. I don't know if I can find it real quick. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find it. Stick with me. This is live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Okay, here we go.
In the ballpark of how they would describe themselves.
Something?
I don't know. I'm not even sure what to call it.
Let's see. I think we get into it here. This is amazing. It really says everything.
I think we should start with, I'm not even sure what to call it. The slow motion train wreck that is the mainstreaming of Nick Fuentes. And I want to just say personally, Nick Fuentes is somebody I've been paying attention to for a couple of years now.
A couple of years he's been paying attention to him. And, if you haven't been paying attention, it's because you're not aware of what's going on in the world. Like Brett Weinstein, one of the smartest evolutionary biologists. They're looking through an evolutionary lens after all. See how that works?
Longtime viewers will remember some discussions that you and I had about what I in alarm called Nazi Twitter. Mm-hmm. Right? I said something on Twitter that caused the algorithm to start feeding me stuff that was not just edgy, racist, whatever, but was actually like rehabilitating the image of Hitler.
No, that can't be. That's just the algorithm. It can't be that there's a bunch of scripted actors who are actually in place to do that in order to discredit criticism of Israel, to make anybody who opposes the genocide or doesn't, thinks that murdering babies is an anti-Semite. But according to Nick or Brett Weinstein, that's just the algorithm. Now, it could also be the algorithm that this For You tab, if there's the For You tab in Twitter, and then there's the other one, the For You tab, which supposedly is suited to exactly what you want to see. Well, if you start thinking about that the genocide is bad, then they'll have a bunch of scripted actors who are possibly, working in a room all together, maybe in other countries, saying that, see, look what the Jews are doing, to give you two choices. They don't want you to have a principled position against genocide in favor of sovereignty for Palestine. They want you always to conflate Jews and Zionism, and you will come to one of two conclusions. You will either conclude that, yes, Israel is the Jewish state and Jews are all terrible, and that's why I'm probably going to get censored just for saying that, and that's why the Palestinians are right, or vice versa, that that Israel is right, and they have to do that because of what happened to the Jews historically. But Brett Weinstein can't figure that out. He thinks it's all organic.
Now, that's not exactly where I found Nick Fuentes, but at the same time that the algorithm was feeding me this actually Nazi stuff, it was also feeding me Nick Fuentes. And it is troubling, or it was troubling to me back then, because Fuentes is so bright and so articulate and frankly charismatic.
Fuentes is bright and articulate and charismatic. Fuentes is charismatic. Fuentes is a small, ugly man who has zero charisma. He is a skilled propagandist, is the correct way to describe him. That is not charisma. But you can see how Brett Weinstein is part of this script to promote Nick Fuentes. Oh, this guy is very, very bad. You really shouldn't watch. Oh, you better not watch him. Don't go watching Nick Fuentes now, because he's so smart and dangerous. Oh my goodness, this Nick Fuentes.
That the stuff that he says that is alarming is coming through on a channel that it is not safe to dismiss. In other words, you have somebody that has the characteristics that make the vile beliefs truly dangerous. And so what has now happened in the aftermath of
because
Charlie,
they appear palatable.
Yes, and if I'm completely honest, the point is I can watch Nick Fuentes from 2 years ago and I can learn things. I can be given actual insight into the mindset of a group of people that I wouldn't ordinarily encounter. Right? How do they think? He is very articulate. And so he gives voice to things that even if you just think that's wrong, you need to know how it sounds in the minds of somebody to whom it sounds good.
Do you see how Brett Weinstein and Heather Heyer are actually promoting Fuentes and making you think that he's an important guy to listen to? Even if you disagree with him, they're actually mainstreaming him because this is part of a broader national security operation, which is why all of these people, all of these big podcasts are all interviewing the guy at the same time. It's all coordinated. It couldn't be more obvious. The only way that you can't see it is if you're part of it, or if you forget that Star Tours is a simulation. If you don't understand that, if you're still that 7-year-old child who thinks they're really on the ride on that transport ship that went the wrong way and that really is fighting the Star Destroyer and thinks they're actually getting somewhere. That's the only reason that you can not see this. And there are a lot of people who will watch this and won't get it. But there are a few people who will, and those are the people that I'm interested in.
And Nick Fuentes is very good at that. So anyway, I got a lot. I learned a lot. The same part of me that has the instinct to go into a DIE space, diversity.
DIE. Isn't Brett Weinstein one of the biggest opponents of diversity, equity, and inclusion? Wait, did he say DIE or DEI? He said DIE. Yeah. He doesn't even know the acronym of the thing he's supposedly so against, and he talks about all the time. This guy's fake. I'm going to show you another example of how incredibly fake he is. I'm going to try. If I can get it. Stay with me, folks. Thank you for being with me. I can't pull it up right now. Okay, another time. You have to be able to see how fake all of this is. All right? Now, that's just one of the examples, okay? Now look at let's see. Let's look up Nick Fuentes, Tucker. It's everywhere. Even President Trump commented on it. President Trump was asked to comment on it, and he gave his comments. Oh, this is so important. This is a national priority to talk about. Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes. Forget all those, opioid deaths. Forget about the 140 people who died from opioids today, young people. That stuff doesn't matter, guys. Nick Fuentes went on Tucker Carlson. Do you see how we're being led? How we're being lied to? We're being deceived? How we're being played? These people despise us. Nick Fuentes isn't one of us. He's not just some regular guy who's, bucking the system and they just couldn't stop his rise, They couldn't stop him. No, that's nonsense. Look at all of the video after video. Why interviewed Fuentes? And Shapiro melts down. This is on the Katie Halper show. PBS NewsHour. Tucker Carlson's interview with anti-Semite Nick Fuentes. Okay? Here's a real reason they're interviewing Nick Fuentes. They're doing it in order to discredit American conservatism, to discredit the idea that we need to actually think about what's happening in our country. That's what I mean by American conservatism. That maybe we need to not involve ourselves in foreign conflicts. That maybe we have serious problems in this country. And when conservatives, and I've never really considered myself a conservative. I come from like the left, whatever that means. I'm kind of over these labels. But conservatives are not the dominant culture in the United States. But they were roped into the MAGA movement and Donald Trump was stuck as the face of it, this longtime Democrat, New York City billionaire. And despite his flaws, a lot of people went along with it because they thought it would be some kind of, rebuke to the liberal establishment, the corrupt Hillary Clintons and Obamas and Joe Bidens and George Soroses. And they're being humiliated. This is the point. That's why Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes did an interview, is to destroy and discredit conservatism so then they can bring back the liberal wing the liberal, if we can call it a wing, of the establishment, so we can have a President AOC or a President Gavin Newsom or a President Ro Khanna. That's why they're doing it. This is not an organic phenomenon. That's why it's all over YouTube. That's why if Nick Fuentes was really banned, if he wasn't allowed anywhere, he would not be all over YouTube. Nick Fuentes is not allowed to have a YouTube account, but he's interviewed and talked about on every single big YouTube channel. That's all they talk about right now. Do you see? You have to understand that it's coordinated. These aren't siloed, separate things. Okay? Here's the same exact narrative. Here's Anya Parampil of the Gray Zone saying the exact same thing. She is on script. I'm not saying she's a national security operative. I'm saying she's too close to the screen, to Star Tours. She doesn't understand that this is part of a script. It is not Trump, but rather the New York Times, Ezra Klein, and many others in corporate media cannot admit the simple truth about Fuentes. It is not Trump, but rather the Israeli genocide and behavior of the Jewish Zionist elite in the United States that have thrust his views into the mainstream. Same exact scripted nonsense as Nick Fuentes, or I'm sorry, as Brett Weinstein. It's not organic. It wouldn't have all happened at the same time. He can't claim to be censored and then be on every channel in alternative media and mainstream media at the same time as if he's relevant while the country is burning. So even the heroes of the alternative media don't understand what is going on because they're taking social media seriously. And Tucker Carlson, whom Anya is very close friends with, is a key figure in this national security theater. Okay? That is why Tucker Carlson, back in 2020, was promoting the lab leak theory when he was still at Fox.
And we're going to do that again right now. Li Meng-Yan is the virologist who says she has evidence about where this pandemic actually came from. We're happy to have her on tonight. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Hi, Tucker. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that you've published some of your research. You're planning on publishing more soon. Give us, for a non-scientific audience, a summary of why you believe this virus came from a lab in Wuhan, please.
Okay, briefly, from my first report, I can press.
Okay. So Tucker in September 2020 interviewed Li Meng-Yan. Now, Li Meng-Yan is a fraud. Li Meng-Yan is supposedly, she presented herself, and Tucker presented her uncritically, without a single iota of skepticism, presented her as the original lab leak whistleblower who just arrived from China and got around the Chinese authorities, arrived from Hong Kong, which of course is part of China, and escaped from the Chinese surveillance state to come and tell the truth on Fox News. You either have to be part of this to believe it, or you have to be a dupe. This is the investigation that I published, with Mark Kulak of Housatonic.live, who I mentioned earlier, who everyone should be watching his streams. His streams get like a couple hundred views on a daily basis, and he's one of the most important analysts in the country, along with JJ Couey. And Mark has done amazing research on a number of issues. And when I saw this key thing, this key issue that Li Meng-Yan, who Tucker Carlson presented as a real whistleblower, his research that he had presented in a stream, I I basically took most of his research and added a little bit more of my own, found a little bit more about her, and showed that she is a complete fraud. Li Mengyan presented herself as a mid-level scientist in Hong Kong, at Hong Kong University, who early in the COVID era learned from a source in the Chinese CDC that this was actually a bioweapon, that COVID-19 was a bioweapon. And her story was that she told her superiors and her husband, and they tried to hush her up. And so she fled to the United States, and with the help of Steve Bannon, the former Goldman Sachs banker, and Guo Wengui, aka Miles Guo, the exiled Chinese billionaire who's trying to overthrow the Chinese government and used a bunch of money to buy, embezzled money to buy a yacht from which he and Bannon declared the federal state of China in the New York harbor because they want to overthrow China. And then he ended up going to jail in the United States for embezzling that money, for being a gigantic fraud. So these are the people who groomed and brought Li Mengyan to prominence in the U.S. media, clearly furnished her to Tucker, and she implied, though never directly stated, that she had never been in the United States before. In fact, Fox News did such a poor job that in the article they wrote about her, they published an image of her wedding. And that does not look like China, does it? Does that look like China to you? No, that looks like, I don't know, rural Pennsylvania or something like that. It's like Amish country. And what else is available online that Mark Kulak found? She was married in New York, in Manhattan, in New York City, to a guy named Ranawaka Pereira. Who is Ranawaka Pereira? He is a prominent researcher, and the son, he descends from a family of two of the most, he descends from one of the biggest families in the biomedical research regime in the United States, funded by, at that point, Fauci. So these people are all on the same team. The lab leak person, the original lab leak whistleblower, is on the same team as the natural origin people, because it's all part of the same thing. And Tucker was part of it too. And Tucker has had every chance to correct this. I talked about this on Redacted. Redacted had me on to talk about this. And I publicly stated on a show which supposedly he watches, and the Redacted people, Clayton and Natalie, are friends with Tucker. And I said that he got this wrong and that this was not true. And he never corrected it. And instead, he's doing this Nick Fuentes thing, which is an obvious national security theater. The only reasonable explanation is he's part of it. And he's recruited people by hanging out with people in alternative media, left-wing people, right-wing people, and bringing them all together. And, you know, I'm going to give you sources to the Trump administration and things like that. And we're going to start criticizing Israel even. We're going to break that taboo. That's how he's gotten these lies through without any criticism, without any skepticism by anyone except for me, JJ Cooey, Mark Kulak, a few people, but no one in the mainstream or the mainstream of the alternative. Let's admit that there is a mainstream in the alternative media. The alternative media meaning, you know, podcasts, people who do this and get tens of thousands of views and have all kinds of, people throwing money at them and huge Substacks and these kinds of things. And millions of followers. There is a mainstream of the alternative media. Okay? Tucker Carlson is part of this. He's a key part of it. That's why he had her on. And Li Mengyan toured all over the country, all over the United States, with the leaders of the health freedom movement, like a Dr. Robert Malone, And if you're a believer in this so-called health freedom movement, you have been taken for a ride. And the way out of this is to start watching and supporting the work of a certain Jonathan J. Cooey of Giga-Ohm Biological. Go to this website, Giga-Ohm Biological, stream.gigaohm biological, and start watching this stuff, and it'll start to make a lot more sense. And some of it will be very challenging and difficult to understand, and you might even recoil at some of it. But if you you change your diet, and instead of eating poison-laced fast food, you'll start to deepen your understanding, and you'll take a step back. You'll get out of the theater and get some fresh air. So, yeah, I'm in a different place than I was 6 months or a year or 2 years ago, and it's been an evolution. And any journalist who doesn't, anybody who calls themselves a journalist and is not evolving, is not figuring new things out, is not putting new pieces together, is probably lying to you. Because I mean, it's important to specialize in different subjects, but, you know, if you're in the mainstream, then you're probably on a script, and you may not even know it. Consider the people who used to talk about COVID and the controlled demolition of America, and how we saw the greatest transfer of wealth, upward transfer of wealth in history. How how children were committing suicide. Think about these things and how that's just been like, what's the term people use? Memory hold? It's just forgotten. Nobody talks about that anymore. All they talk about is this. Everyone just thinks it came out of the Wuhan lab and we're going to figure it out. And we're going to get Fauci. We're going to put him in jail. The left and the right think that. I cannot find a single person on the anti-imperialist left who I thought were serious about debunking propaganda who will examine this. Doesn't it show how much the left is subject to peer pressure, to groupthink, to being a bunch of basically mindless sheep? It's like a flock of birds. If you have a flock of 30 birds and one of them flies off, like I've done, then everyone just looks at them like they're crazy because they're not actually thinking. Those birds are about to fly into a windmill and one flies off and the other one's just looking at them like he's crazy. Well, he flies right into it. But if you had, like, I don't know, the leaders, 3 or 4 or 5 of those, then people would like start to think. But no one will do that. So I hope that, I don't know, Jimmy Dore or the Gray Zone or somebody will take a look at this and start to think, wait a minute, what happened here? Think beyond the headlines of the day. Think about what happened in 2020, 2021, 2022. And what really was the pandemic. That's something I'm going to hopefully get into later in the week. I'm trying to get Jonathan J. Cooey back on my stream because he is the only person who I've seen that can explain what the pandemic really was. I figured out it was fake. But the pandemic really was a project of the Human Genome Project. It was an operation of the Human Genome Project. And there was not a single person out there who was saying that. And I wouldn't have figured that out unless I got in touch with Jonathan J. Cooey. and I watch his streams, and it's a commitment to do that. And I support him. I send him what I can, a few bucks every month. And I don't just request, I'm imploring you to do the same, to go watch his stream. And even if you don't quite get all of it, there's a lot of scientific terminology, biological terminology that's hard for the layman to understand. And I think that's something that he may have to work on, and I think he is working on. But if you're actually going to put all your chips on the table, and instead of going along with the lab leak, and he could have been he was an advisor to RFK, and RFK fired him when he told him in a polite way that he was wrong about something, that the whole Wuhan cover-up book was wrong. Jonathan Cooey is listed in the acknowledgments as the first person without whom that book would not have been possible. And he's quoted in the book several times. And if he didn't, he could have just gone along with the book, even though he knew it was a hoax. It was nonsense, that it was this. He could have gone along with that and gotten paid handsomely. But instead, he's not. Because the man has integrity. And I'll say, I've never met him. I've talked to him on the phone. I don't, it's been a while. I'm not telling you to go support him because he's my friend or something, or, because I hang out and drink beers with him, or I'm going to benefit or something like that, or because I like him on a personal level. I don't really know him on a personal level. I watch his work. I'll text him and he doesn't even respond to me sometimes. I'm trying to get him on my stream to explain to the best of his ability how the COVID operation was COVID was an operation of the Human Genome Project. He may come on, he may not. I don't know. But my point is, even if he doesn't respond to me, I'm still going to watch his streams. I'm still going to implore you to do it. I'm still going to talk about him a lot, because I think he's one of a tiny handful of people who are leading, who are providing a light in this darkness, in this obfuscation, in this national security theater, and has really changed and revolutionized the way I understand. And he's helped reality and the way what I do, what my priorities are. And it's not easy for me to just go on and talk about this stuff and say, that I wish Jimmy Dore, who's friends with Tucker Carlson and, friends with powerful people and is part of this fake health freedom movement that is a national security operation. It's not easy for me to say that. Jimmy Dore was nice to me. Jimmy Dore hosted me to talk about Zionism. Jimmy Dore hosted me to talk about my Haiti documentary. So I could, just say, well, I don't want to, alienate him because he was nice to me and maybe he'll have me on again at some point. It's not personal. There's nothing personal. This is much bigger. This is the future. This is our children. This is our grandchildren. This is our country. This is our world. So I'm all in, and I hope you are too. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Please consider supporting my work. Check out the work of Jonathan Cooey of GigaOM Biological. Check out the work. Show his page again. Check out the work of Mark Kulak of Houstonic.live. And I appreciate everyone who's staying with me and is willing to be honest. And the reason I named this channel Uncaptured Media is because I've just seen people become captured, and in particular by this whole lab leak nonsense. That was the reason I named it Uncaptured, because people get captured by the national security theater. And We need to free ourselves. And that's by changing what we consume, leaving social media, or if you're going to use social media, understanding that it's a national security theater and it's very, very easy to get wrapped up into the lies, into the deceptions, into the web. And by understanding that many of the people who you think are honest actors are not. So, and anyone who I've criticized or called out or however you want to call it, I implore them to talk to me, to call me, message me, have me on your show, have the, JJ or Mark on your show, and challenge them. If you disagree with me, challenge me. That's all I got. Thank you all.